Hello YouTube, Robert here from Duelist Revolution doing another commentary video for you guys. Today we have an interesting feature match between Swaaj playing his Infernities and Patrick playing his Geargia Karakuri on the right. Swaaj, even after the Archfiend hit to 1, Swaaj still wanted to try Infernity, so he loves Infernity. So he has a new build combined with Shaddolls, and yeah, it should be interesting. Patrick on the other hand trying a new Geargia Karakuri build with the recent support of the Geargia structure deck. Swaaj decides to go first, figuring out what to do. I think he's deciding whether to special or normal summon his Dark Grepher. He can discard the Shaddoll Beast to special summon the Grepher, and then he would still have a normal summon, but at this point I don't think his normal summon is really relevant, so yeah, he decides to normal summon the Dark Grepher anyway. Activates effect, discarding the Shaddoll Beast and sending a Shaddoll Falco to the graveyard, which of course with the effect special summons itself. So that's a pretty good opening play. He now has a setup for next turn where he can flip the Shaddoll Falco and reborn the Beast. Sets 2 to his back row and passes the turn to Patrick. Patrick draws a card. He has a lot of monsters on his hand. That's not something you're really looking for in this kind of deck, but let's see how he plays it. He summons the Geargia Augur. That's the new support. When it's summoned, it allows you to search your deck for a machine type earth monster. But for the rest of the turn, you cannot connect your battle phase and only special summon machine type monsters. So yeah, it's a great instant rank 4, since you can search the Geargia Accelerator and just overlay it for Gear Giant X and then make instant pluses. And of course we all know that making pluses is what Geargia is all about. It's a really great deck for late game, grinding your opponent out of resources. So he searches the Geargia Accelerator, special summons it. At this point I think he's deciding what to do next. He could bounce it for the Birdman and go for a Karakuri play, since he has a Birdman on hand. Or he can just make it Gear Giant, and it looks like he's making the rank 4 play, summoning his common Gear Giant X. Swaaj responding by accidentally showing his Infernity Break to his opponent, but then compulses the Gear Giant X immediately, forcing it back into the extra deck and not giving Patrick another plus. Patrick sets 2 Phoenix Wing Wind Blasts and ends his turn. Swaaj draws a card. He flips his Shaddoll Falco, activating the effect to reborn the Shaddoll Beast. He activates the effect of his Dark Grepher, ditching a Infernity Necromancer to send another dark monster from his deck to the grave, which is Shaddoll Beast. This basically lets him draw a new card for the Necromancer he had in hand, with the effect of the Beast. And he draws into a what looks like a Raigeki. So I think Swaaj is considering making a synchro. Oh no, he's just trying to play it safe and swinging by with both monsters, dropping Patrick down to 5700 life points. He sets his Infernity Barrier and ends his turn. Patrick is deciding whether to activate the Phoenix Wing Wing Blast in the end phase, but he doesn't. Draws a card and normal summons his Geargia Arsenal, attacks over the Shaddoll Falcon with 1700 damage. Or 1700 attack. Bringing Swaaj down to 6900 life points. he activates the effect of his Geargia arsenal to search out the Geargia monster from his deck, special summoning his Geargia armor, which can set itself into face down defense position, and then when it flips up it can search another Geargia again. So like I said, the Geargia deck is all about making pluses and grinding out your opponent into the mid and lately game. Switching his Geargia armor to defense mode, and then activates his Phoenix Wing Blast in his own turn to top deck the Shaddoll Beast. And I think he tries to give Swaaj a not very good top deck, but I don't think Swaaj will mind because he then can activate the effect of his Dark Grepher again. But we'll see how it plays out. Passing his turn, Swaaj drawing of course the Shaddoll Beast again, activating the effect of the Dark Grepher, sending another dark monster to his graveyard. Swaaj is considering sending his only Archfiends, but he's considering his options at this point. So he can send the Archfiend to the graveyard to like reborn it later, or he can, I think he can send a Scarm of the Burning Abyss to the graveyard, which can search him into a level 3 fiend. I like how he's tried to use the Infernities. It's a new kind of like monster mashup with a lot of different stacks in it, so yeah. It's not the first turn setup that we know of Infernity. Oh, Swaaj sends his Archfiends, activates a Raigeki, destroying the Geargia armor, so Patrick won't get a search out of it. And then attacks directly with the Dark Grepher for another 1700 damage. Patrick draws a card. At this point, there isn't much Patrick can do anymore. He has 2 sets, I think an MST and a Birdman on hand, which is pretty useless at this point. Swaaj drawing into the Infernity Launcher is an incredible top deck, but unfortunately for Swaaj, Patrick has the MST to answer it, otherwise it would have definitely been game. He ends his turn, Patrick draws another card. Ends his turn, Swaaj draws into his Infernity Necromancer, which is also a pretty good top deck, but Patrick decides to Phoenix Wing Blast it. Swaaj chains his Infernity Barrier, so that should negate the Phoenix Wing Blast. I think at this point they were discussing whether the Necromancer is still in attack mode, because its own effects switches it back to defense mode. And in that case the Infernity Barrier could not be activated because you have to have a face-up attack position Infernity monster, and if the Necromancer would switch itself to defense position it would have been an illegal activation. Then again Swaaj asks if he would have activated it on summon or later after the effect, and Patrick responds of course after the effect, so that means the Necromancer is already in defense mode and then the Phoenix Wing Blast is activated. So at this point Swaaj just kicks for another 1700 damage, bringing Patrick down to his last 500. Patrick now setting his Birdman and ends. Swaaj of course top decking the Necromancer again, and Patrick responding with Phoenix Chain, on which on his turn Swaaj chains with Infernity Break, destroying the Phoenix Chain, allowing the effect of the Necromancer and just doing Infernity shenanigans. At this point Patrick scoops and goes into game 2. So siding should be interesting with these decks, as Geargia of course can side the Shadow Imprisoning Mirror without any problems, and yeah, I don't know what Swaaj has in mind for his side, so I'm sure we'll find out though. Patrick opening with a Geargia Augur, searching the Geargia Accelerator, overlaying it for a Gear Giant X, and searching his deck for another Geargia Augur. Oh, it's an ancient gearbox. It's a pretty cool deck Patrick used. When it's added from the deck or graveyard to the hand, you can search your deck for another machine monster with 500 attack or defense, so when he adds the gearbox he can add another Geargia outer, so it's basically a +2 instead of a +1. So yeah, that's a pretty good opening play. And he has the matching back rows to protect his Gear Giant, so if it lasts another turn on the field, Patrick can activate the effect again and just go insane. Sway opening again with the Dark Grepher. At this point, I think Patrick is asking if the Dark Grepher's effect to discard is a cost or part of the effect. It is part of. It's not part of the effect. It's a cost. So in that case, Sway has to discard first for Patrick to respond. Activating the effect, and Patrick responds with Macrocosmos. So because the cost is paid first, the Archfiend is sent to the grave instead of being banished, but the monster that Dark Grepher now sends to the graveyard is banished instead of being sent to the grave. So that is pretty tough for Sway. He decides to banish his Shaddoll Beast. Or not. Searching his deck, but it looks like, yeah, it's gonna be the Beast. Which apparently has the least use for him now, so that's why he got rid of it. Yeah, first time macro is always a bad thing for Infernities, or a lot of decks. He activates the Raigeki because he does not want the Gear Giant to survive another turn. Patrick makes a mistake here because the Geargia Hour should also be banished, since Macrocosmos banished everything, even materials. Sway attacks with the Dark Grepher and ends his turn. Patrick now summoning another Geargia Augur, and Sway responds with Breakthrough Skill, in which Patrick responds with Trapstun. There is another slight mistake here. Since Trapstun is activated last, it resolves first. So it also negates the Macrocosmos, which would mean the Breakthrough Skill is sent to the grave instead of being banished. Patrick now making another Gear Giant X, activating the effect to bring back the Accelerator from his graveyard. It wouldn't get sent to the... He wouldn't get banished because the Trapstun also negated his own Macrocosmos. Patrick does not have a battle phase because he activated the effect of Geargia Hour, so he passes the turn. Sway at this point considering his options. Macrocosmos is still active on the field, so he cannot use the effect of the Grepher the way he likes it, but he still decides to activate it, discarding a Shaddoll Falcon, which gets banished, and also banishing another Shaddoll Beast. At this point it seems like he's getting rid of the death draws, and he needs to become handless, of course, for the Infernity Necromancer. He had 2 monsters on hand and only 1 normal summon, so... But he wants to activate the effect of the Necromancer and shit. Patrick activates a Shadow Imprisoning Mirror, so he drew into both his floodgates for Infernity, which is, yeah... There's not much Sway can do. That's why he scoops, and we'll go into game 3. Patrick drawing all his side in his opening hand, so that's pretty good. Or at least one of them, and draws into the Shadow Imprisoning Mirror later. So that's something Sway knows, that Patrick sides these now, and that's something he has to like keep in mind. Sway opening. Activating a reinforcement of the army, which lets him search his Dark Grepher. Summons the Dark Grepher, activates the effect, discarding his Infernity Randomizer, which is actually a pretty fun card, but I think we'll get to see that later. And ditching a Scarm of the Burning Abyss to the graveyard. And of course Scarm effects triggers in the end phase, which allows Sway to search a level 3 fiend from his deck. So, like you said, you shouldn't be cutting me, I can still search. Searching a Necromancer, and that's his turn. Also pretty decent opening. Patrick setting his Geargia armor and 3 back row. Passes the turn. And Sway decides to blind MST 2 of Patrick's back row, hitting a trap stun and what seems like a chain disappearance. Sway sets his drag down into the grave to become handless, and summons his Infernity Necromancer, which lets him reborn one Infernity monster as long as he's handless. And he has the Infernity Randomizer in grave, which he can reborn at this point. But Patrick decides to respond with a Phoenix Chain, and Sway on his turn has a trap stun to answer that. Sway summoning the Infernity Randomizer in defense mode and activating his effect. Its effect is as long as you're handless, you can draw one card once per turn. If it's a spell trap card, you take 500 damage, but if it's a monster card, you inflict 200 times its level against your opponent, so it's a pretty cool card. But he drew Foolish Burial, so he takes 500 damage and activates the Foolish Burial to send a Shaddoll Beast to the graveyard, which lets him draw another card. So he's just going through his deck pretty quick. Now that he has a card in hand, he can activate his drag down to the grave. And he can take a look at Patrick's hand and decides to get rid of the Geargia arsenal and his own 1-for-1. Both players draw a card. And he's drawn to another Infernity Necromancer. And Patrick, it would appear, Patrick drew his Macrocosmos again. Sway has not yet activated the effect of his Dark Grepher, so he activates it by discarding his Necromancer and special summoning a Shaddoll Falco from his deck. So Sway has now got a lot of field presence and his hand is empty again, so he's ready to top deck that one Archfiend that's still in his deck somewhere. Patrick flips his Geargia armor, which allows him to search for a Geargia monster from his deck. He's considering what he should search. I think he's deciding between a Geargia Augur or another Geargia Accelerator. Depends if he wants to make a generic rank 4 play or just wants to go for more pluses. Searches the Geargia Augur, so he decides to go for more pluses. Special summons his Geargia Accelerator from his hand in defense mode, overlays the 2 for if he overlays for Gear Giant X, he can use the effect of Geargia Augur in main phase 2, but if he overlays for generic rank 4, then he cannot use the effect of Geargia Augur, so that's what he's deciding on now, but he decides to go for the Gear Giant X, activates the effect, searches his Accelerator back from the graveyard. And deciding what monster he should attack. The Necromancer, of course, can reborn an Infernity monster every turn, and the Dark Grepher can fill Sway's graveyard with Dark monsters, so he's deciding between the two, and decides to attack the Necromancer. Main phase 2 summons a new Geargia Augur, searching out another Geargia Accelerator, which he special summons, overlays for what has to be another Gear Giant X. Activating the effect to search out a Geargia armor. So yeah, this basically shows that Geargia still got it. They can still go for a lot of pluses in one turn and try to grind out your opponent in the later game. Sway drawing a card. flipping through his graveyard. Flip the Shaddoll Beast, the Falco, so you can reborn the Shaddoll Beast from his graveyard. Sets 1 back row. Activates the effect of Infernity Randomizer, for which he has to be handless. Drawing an Infernity Mirage, so that means Patrick takes 200 points of damage. This is a pretty good draw for Swaaj, because his graveyard is set up with Infernity, so as soon as he gets to summon the Mirage and remains handless, he can do all kinds of Infernity combos. Considering his options and his opponent's options. He has not normal summoned yet, so the Infernity Mirage can be normal summoned this turn. And he asked what happens when the Gear Giant gets destroyed. When Gear Giant gets destroyed, you can special summon a level 3 or lower Geargia monster from your deck, or from your graveyard, so that's not an option here since Patrick only has level 4 Geargias. Swaaj decides to synchro summon for the Black-Rose Dragon and cleaning the entire field, and of course because Shaddoll Beast was on the field he gets to draw an additional card. Unfortunately for him he drew into his Archfiend. At this point Swaaj wasn't hoping on drawing a monster, so he could special summon with the effect of Mirage. But he summons the Infernity Archfiend and attacks for 18 points of damage. Patrick is now searching for going through Swaaj's grave. At this point he's deciding if he wants to set the Geargia armor and go for more pluses next turn, or should like use the 2 cards in his hand to make an Exceed that prevents Swaaj from doing his combos next turn. And he decides to go for the rank 4. So at this point he makes Castel, the Skyblaster Musketeer, which is a really good option at this point, because if the Infernity Archfiend would be sent to the graveyard, Swaaj can special summon it next turn and search his deck for more Infernity cards. But fortunately for Patrick, the Castel shovels the Archfiend back into the deck, so Swaaj cannot use it. Swaaj drawing another monster card, not what he was hoping for, so he has to wait another turn for his Infernity Mirage to be activated. Patrick attacking his face-down Necromancer, which will stay on the field because they're both 2000. Swaaj drawing another card. It's finally not a monster card, so he summons the Mirage, sets the back row and activates the effect of the Mirage. Allows him to special summon 2 more Infernity monsters from his graveyard. 2 more Necromancers. Activating the effect of one of the Necromancers to summon the Infernity Randomizer in attack mode. At this point he uses the effect of the Infernity Randomizer to draw into a Soul Charge, which is a pretty good top deck at this, because he already has a huge field presence and can do a lot more plays this turn or next turn if he wishes. He's now considering making a rank 3 play. Activates Raigeki, getting rid of the Castel and overlaying 2 of his Necromancers. Since he doesn't have any other Infernity monsters in grave, yeah, overlaying 2 of his Necromancers for Nightmare Shark, which can attack your opponent directly, but that's not really important right now. Randomizer and Nightmare Shark attack for 2800 damage. Patrick activating Dark Hole, getting rid of Swaaj's entire field, but Swaaj still has a Soul Charge on his hand, so he feels confident. Sets 1 back row, asking how much life points he's still got left, and activates Soul Charge. At this point Swaaj has a lot of options, which, yeah, we'll see about what he reborns. He can reborn the Falco, which is a tuner. He can reborn more Necromancers to go into more rank 3 plays. He can reborn the Randomizer to get extra draw power. As long as his hand remains empty and his life points are still steady, he can do a lot at this point. he decides to reborn a Necromancer, Shaddoll Beast and Shaddoll Falco, so he takes 3000 points of damage, activating the effect of the Necromancer to reborn the Randomizer back again, activating the effect of the Randomizer, drawing a Dark Grepher, so burns Patrick for 800 points of damage, bringing him to his last 700. And Swaaj synchro summons 3 of his monsters to a level 8 monster, which will be Void Ogre Dragon. Void Ogre Dragon lets you negate a spell trap card as long as you're handless once per turn. So Patrick drew into his Raigeki, but unfortunately Void Ogre Dragon can negate it, so that's why Patrick scoops up his card and Swaaj wins the match. Thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe for more videos.